have we here, Q? Some diabolical acid that eats its way through anything? Put that down, 007. I told you before that when you're inside this lab, you are to touch absolutely nothing. That happens to be my afternoon tea. I'll set you it is tight. Come with me. Now pay careful attention, 007. I present to you the Catamaran Experimental, EXP for short. She sports a central power unit, turning a 140mm propeller for optimal thrust and stability. Astern, we have dual rudder steering for responsive maneuvering. At the bow, you have complete control of a video camera mounted on fully articulated gimbals, giving you pan and tilt capability. The video images are transmitted to a ground monitor where they can be recorded, of course. Mounted on the central deck is your rocket launch pad and various rockets to serve your needs. Mounted to the sponson, we have the water recovery crane, enabled with full 360-degree rotation, capable of retrieving the spent rocket once it has landed in the water. I think that covers it, and, oh, 007, would you be so kind as to bring her back in one piece this time?
Well, I hope you enjoyed that spoof on James Bond. I have to admit, after seeing it, I think my British accent could use some work. Well, hello again, everybody. This is New York City Bobby with yet another project that I'd like to share with you. Now, I have had the desire to do several boat projects, and to that end, I built that catamaran. Now, the choice of building a catamaran were made for several reasons. One, they're pretty easy to build. Two, they're very stable. And three, you can change the deck out pretty easily to suit whatever project you happen to want to do. Now, first up was my desire to launch an Estes rocket off of the catamaran. Now, since I live in New York City and I happen to live pretty close to the Hudson River, I decided we would go down to the Hudson River, put the catamaran in the mighty Hudson, and see if we could launch an Estes rocket off the shore of Manhattan. Now, joining me on this adventure were Sarah, Dale, Nicole, Musab, and Griffin, and some parental units. And I'm about to share with you exactly how this great adventure played out.
Without going into too much details, the catamaran consists of two pontoons, sometimes called sponsons, with an upper deck which is basically just a piece of plywood. The pontoons are made of blue foam covered in light fiberglass and epoxy resin. The actual design of the pontoons are loosely based on a cruise shell design that has been modified quite a bit. The blue foam is 2 inches thick, and since the pontoon is about 40 inches long, I decided to produce cross-sections every 2 inches. These cross-sections were laser cut out of thin plywood, placed on either side of the foam, and then rough cut out by hand using a hacksaw blade. They were then sanded, the plywood taken off, and then all glued together onto a plywood top deck. 2 threaded inserts were placed in each pontoon during construction so that all you need to do is screw the deck on with 4 screws. Additionally, a thin brass tube was placed near the stern of each pontoon to allow the rudder to be attached. After all the cross-sections were glued together, sheetrock compound was skim-coated over the entire structure. I can't overstate how little sheetrock compound was needed and how easy it was to sand it smooth. The only downside is it is messy as a lot of dust is created. Although sheetrock compound may not seem like the best choice, it is easy to sand, and if you fiberglass over it, there doesn't seem to be any issues. Steering is done with dual rudders linked together and controlled by a single servo. The transmission was made using bearings and bevel gears. It looks pretty bulky, but it is actually lightweight. If you're familiar with FIRST Robotics, the motor used is called a bag motor. It is coupled to the shaft using number 25 chain and sprockets. I wanted to be able to remove the motor and experiment using a wind turbine instead of a sail to propel the boat. Early tests don't look very promising, but this is still a work in progress. The catamaran was tested quite successfully in Central Park's model boating pond. This is a beautiful place with 2 famous statues on the edges, one of Hans Christian Andersen and the other of Alice in Wonderland. With the boat fully tested, it was time to attempt the rocket launch. The team readied the boat, became familiar with the controls, and discussed the mission. Avoiding the geese and the pigeons, to the river we went, handing the boat to one another. We broke Murphy's Law by not falling on the rocks. Finally, we got her in the river, and away she went to test out the crane recovery system. As you can see, the base servo was rotating out of control, and our operator had to make some quick adjustments in order to learn how to control it. Once this skill was mastered, the lifting servo could be attached. This raises and lowers a magnet using a string and pulley system. Out along the shoreline, we sent the Cat to see if the crane could latch onto the faux rocket. Due to the current and lack of good control over the crane, this proved nearly impossible. We would not scrub the mission, however. It was decided to launch the rockets and drag them back to shore using the Cat. Fearing that the rocket could possibly be launched accidentally due to radio interference, two servos were mounted next to each other, with each having a limit switch double-sided taped to the side of it. The limit switches are wired in series so that in order for the rocket to launch, both the limit switches have to be closed. So when the first servo is engaged, it moves like this. That arms the rocket. And now when the second servo moves over and closes this limit switch, the rocket fires. In order for this rocket to accidentally fire, some sort of radio glitch would have to take place that moves both these servos, and I felt that was fairly safe. The first rocket to be launched is the smaller rocket. Powered by a small A-sized Estes rocket engine, the rocket sports streamer recovery. When the ejection charge fires, 3 orange-colored streamers should pop out and allow the rocket to land back in the river with minimal amount of drift due to the wind. The rocket was placed on the launch pad, and the alligator clips were attached to the igniter. Off the Catamaran went to its imaginary launch site 100 or so feet offshore. Upon firing the rocket, we never saw it again. We don't know how it could have disappeared from sight, but these are some of the mysteries that seem to always plague model rocket launches.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whoa!
Oh!
That actually worked.
Where is it? I can't even see it.
The bigger rocket was placed on the launch pad and made ready to launch by attaching the alligator clips. This rocket is also powered by the same low-powered A-size engine. This rocket is designed with helicopter recovery. When the engine's ejection charge fires, the rocket opens up and deploys 2 blades that allow it to helicopter down. You will notice that this mechanism only started to work toward the end of its descent. Here you will see the launch in real time and in slow-mo. As you can see, water recovery was never needed.
All right, you ready to arm it?
Yeah.
All right, let's arm it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh my God, it's gonna land on the ground. Oh my God. I don't want it to land on the highway. Wait, watch out.
Hey, watch out! Watch out! I'll get it.
Well, that helicopter recovery mechanism was actually working quite well toward the end, but I'm really glad no one was hit by it. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching the video of launching an Estes rocket from a catamaran floating in the Hudson River off the shore of Manhattan. I have lots of future plans for that catamaran in mind, so if you enjoyed this video, please stay tuned for some more coming up in the near future. This is New York City Bobby signing off.